Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 13th episode of the Roofless Dog and Pony Show. My name is Julio, and I am the dream alchemist at Roofless Painters. I am going to be the show of this presentation. And for those of you who joined for the first time, the Roofless Dog and Pony Show is a live, unedited presentation featuring the stylistic and conceptual inspiration behind our painting webinars. We do this every week, and what we do is introduce the theme of our next painting webinar, the inspiration behind it, and we go about contemporary notes, art history notes, and also we introduce a little bit of commentary. These presentations are all archived in our YouTube channel. They are all in our Instagram, and they essentially become the introduction of our painting webinar. So that's why we want to open them up to everyone, so everyone can see what we are painting and how we choose our subjects for our paintings. Yeah, I have a few slides. I'm very excited about this next collection of paintings. And I'm going to go ahead and share. Should I share the first one? Not yet. The title of our next webinar, painting webinar, is Distance Unlearning. Distance Unlearning. I don't have a cover yet, but I'm going to explain exactly why we are going to do this. So on our last painting webinar, we talked about Monet and his paintings, and we discovered or found out this extraordinary, incredible piece. It's not very well known. This painting, it's titled A Corner of the Apartment. It was painted in 1875 when Monet and his wife and child went from London back to Paris. It's a very interesting painting because it doesn't fit the definition necessarily of impressionistic, in the sense that Impressionists did not use black paint whatsoever, and this painting has a lot of dark bluish notes. It is incredible because of the symmetry of the room. It resembles, or it evokes the idea of a stage. There's this remarkable light effect on the herringbone pattern of the parquet on the floor. And there's the figure of a child. The child is Jean Monnet. It was his first child, Monet's first child. And the scene depicts Jean in the middle of this room or space, and then the room is in darkness, even though there are chandeliers, but they're off. The room is flooded by the entrance light, or the light from the entrance, but also the light from behind. That curtain in the back of the painting, or the back of the room, that see-through fabric that lets the light just flood inside of the room. It bounces on a table which is right next to the painting, and then reflects on the floor. So we went over the details of the painting. It's quite revolutionary and radical. It's in the d'Orsay Museum, although it's not on display. They have it in the collection, but it's not out on display. I don't know why. It's our favorite from by Monet. And I just brought two close-ups because our painting webinar will be related to, if I can find them. Yes. One is a close-up of the portrait of the Jean Monnet, and notice how the colors used and the value of the colors used, it's pretty much very similar to the background. So the image kind of like fades, that's not on the spotlight. So we love this image, but we discovered another image that just popped up, and then we investigated. It's not the only image in the room, and we went over this painting and we couldn't find the other image. But Camille Monet, I don't know if you can see the image, is sitting down by the table that's behind, right next to the back window. So you can see the hands, and I think she's wearing a scarf. I'm just going to bring the image forward, and you can see the elbow of Camille Monet leaning on, right? Leaning on the table. I feel the same way. And then I just cropped it, and I'm covering a little bit of her face, but she is, the skirt, it's cascading down, but she is looking at Jean from the table. Anyhow, so at the same time that we talked about this throughout the week, we also came across an article that compiled a series of images of children struggling to follow distance learning. Images, they were meant to be hilarious, images of kids bored, frustrated, completely unhappy, and not having any fun at all. By just like watching whatever was going on the laptop, on the computer. That's a reality that's happening right now that we may not be as familiar because we're not experiencing it, but in a way we are. But some people that have, most people that have children that are going through this, and it's not easy. And we've been thrust in this new world and reality, and article after article is explaining or trying to articulate the effects that this is going to have in this generation of kids. So we found there was a connection between the child in Monet's image and the children depicted. I'm just going to bring you an image in this article. So of course there's this huge you could argue that there's a huge chasm between a childhood in the late 1800s with no technology before the Industrial Revolution, and what kind of like childhood Jean Monnet might have had, and then today's children, which are in a completely different world. So as polarized as these two experiences may seem, we feel like there is a connection in the mood behind the portrait of Jean Monnet in this painting and the mood of children today resigned on the other side of the screen to follow through and struggling with that. So it is that we're going to tap into. That's going to be the inspiration of the webinar. And what we decided to do was to compile a library of stock images of children really having a hard time sitting in front of a computer with a huge range of emotions, and that's going to be the subject. We're going to work off of a photograph, and then we picked images that showed several layers of emotion or several ranges of emotion. So in that sense, I'm just going to bring you another one that speaks for itself. So when we went over these images, we remembered of a genre of portraiture that was in vogue during the Dutch Golden Age in the 16th century. That was called tronies. It was wildly successful, and it consisted of portraits of people that were not necessarily commissioned or known, showing a specific emotion. This is a genre that people don't talk a lot about, but we want to just bring you some examples. And what we're going to do with this collection of paintings, we're going to do contemporary tronies in which the subject will be a child having an emotion in front of a computer screen. So this painting, for example, it's a good example of a tronie. This was by a Dutch painter called Jules van Krasbeek, the Smoker. It's one of the best examples of what a tronie spelled TRONENIE, tronie. And so the tronies of the 16th century were inspired by none other than Leonardo da Vinci. He started this trend when he did caricatures of people on full profile, and he put them together facing each other. The portraits were facing each other. So it was something that it wasn't done before, and it spread throughout Europe, and the Dutch painters at the time thought this was incredible. And there's something really contemporary about the images, because these are not resting poses. These are people captured almost in a snapshot. There's a photographic sense of these paintings that's really unique and yeah, very specific. So I'm going to give you other examples of tronies at the time. And we chose paintings or portraits of tronies that were in a way similar of what a child today would feel like or express in front of a computer screen, because we want to establish a conceptual bridge between the 1600s to the 21st century. This was a painting by Adriaan Brouwer, another Dutch painter. He was one of the most famous tronie painters. And there is a painting by him, and there is another one that's really good, something about a poison. This one right here, by the same artist. I think it has, I would argue, or I would say it has an impressionistic quality, the way it's painted. This is titled, I forgot, it's titled the bitter poison. It's titled The Bitter Poison, and again it's a snapshot of an emotion by the sitter. The people were done with formal portraits, and a lot of painters wanted to experiment by bringing not resting poses. There was a French painter as well, famous, Joseph Ducrot. I think Joseph Ducrot. He lived in the 1700s, 1735 to 1802, and he did a lot of self-portraits. This is him with emotions, exaggerated emotions, and captured in an instant. So I don't know how they did it, but that's a different webinar, a different lesson. But this is a Frans Hals, I believe. Frans Hals, Dutch painter. Yes, Frans Hals. Malbab, I think that's the portrait, or that's a title. Yeah, another, the portraits were not supposed to be of famous people, and they were not supposed to be featured in grand homes. These were rebellious acts by painters that they really wanted to break through tradition, or break with tradition, rather. Yeah, it was inspired by some of the grotesque heads drawn by Leonardo da Vinci, who pioneered the drawings of paired grotesque heads, where two heads, usually in profile, were placed opposite each other in order to accentuate their differences. That's something, yeah. The picture was typically sold on the art market without identification of the sitter, and was not commissioned and retained by the sitter as portraits normally were. Another one that I find interesting, another Frans Hals. This is considered also in the genre of tronism. But what I wanted to say next is that tronie portraits, or the genre of tronism or tronist portraits, were not supposed to be always exaggerated. Some tronies were portraying images of or state of boredom or sadness. And some art historians consider the girl with a pearl earring, believe it or not, they consider it a tronie, an example of tronie, of a tronie. Vermeer was also living through a time when tronie portraits were still in vogue. He has some examples of that genre, and some art historians consider this to be one of them. I don't necessarily agree, but I think you could just squeeze anything within that genre, I guess. To me, it's more of a resting pose, and it's not really the case. But we could make the case that this could be another emotion. So what I'm gonna do next is this is the French, also the French painter Joseph. I forgot the last name. I'm just gonna perform some French for you. Ducrot. Um, there you go. So it's himself yawning. He was the subject of his own painting. But what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna give you some. I'm gonna show some examples of contemporary artists that use whether they know of it or not. I think they do. They use Trony genre to paint their portraits. And the first one is John Curran. He's a contemporary artist, and he's famous for doing realistic representations of erotic images in which the characters. I'm not a fan of his work, but he's a great painter. Um, he paints ladies with humongous boobs, among other stuff. Sorry to. There you go. This is an edited example, Exhibit A. Anyhow, so this is a good example of a 16th century genre used by contemporary artists. I'm going to give you another example of what I consider. These are selections. These are selections that we did. I consider a Trony genre portrait, or a Trony portrait, or a portrait in the genre of Trony, of a Trony. Another contemporary artist that I think uses this kind of style for portraiture. Her name, how to pronounce her name? Her name is Lisa Yaskavich. Lisa Yaskavich. She's a contemporary artist based in New York, and she's also famous for painting figures and portraits, mostly figures from a different, from female gaze. So this is another of her portraits. Lisa Yaskavich. Tronies were not only done in the 16th century, but the idea of capturing an emotion on a portrait has always been part of a subject to consider. So what we're going to do in this, and I'm about to kind of like wrap it up really, you guys. What we're going to do in this painting webinar titled Distant Unlearning is to pick from a bank of images that we selected an image of a child looking at a computer screen and with a certain emotion. Some of them are sleeping, some of them are angry, some of them they're just completely checked out. And that's going to be the subject. We're going to go from landscape from last week to a subject, and in that sense I'm just going to bring up an article at The Atlantic that talks about how distance learning isn't working. That's the title of the article, and it talks about an experience of a mom saying that the fact that parents were thrust into this new modus operandi in regards of education, this one-size-fits-all education that barely works in classrooms, and now it's very unmanageable in with kids spread out in a wide spectrum in various kind of like household situations. It's even worse. She's able to contextualize the experiences, saying that some people are single parents, some people have one child, some people have more than one. Sometimes the age difference is close, but sometimes it's not. So the circumstances are just too varied for this model to be applied successfully. It's barely manageable in a normal classroom or in-person classroom, and this is a disaster. So I don't know. I mean, everyone has experiences with this, obviously, but The article is saying that, or she's proposing for the school to having more of a role of a mediation between the parent and the child, and trying to articulate certain flexible options that could be more applied to the experience of the child. And one example, she's saying every family looks different and has different needs. Some children have no siblings, some have many. Some children have parents who don't speak English as a first language, but who could provide instruction much more easily on their native languages. Some families have two working parents trying to fit in school with their kids. Some families have an out-of-work parent because of the financial crisis that has resulted from this pandemic. It's just too unrealistic to pretend that the same formula is going to work for every single household. She proposes something a little bit controversial, basically saying that now some of the parents that have done homeschooling before may have or maybe a little bit more prepared. We personally feel that the homeschooling has its own, it comes with its own challenges and disadvantages. Anyhow, we'll share this, but what you have to do right now, you have to go to our website, you have to check our calendar, click on the link where you can register for this fantastic and awesome and interesting webinar. It's only $20. It's 3 hours total. You can have a bunch of materials or none. And what we do, this is the inspirational video. Sorry for the pause, but we build on this content throughout the session. So not only we talk about the technical stuff and how to approach the painting itself, but we also built on everything we barely touched here. So thank you for listening. This was shorter than usual. I love it. We're just gonna upload this on our YouTube channel. If you're here, you guys, you are amazing, and you get 5 stars. And if you're watching us from the future, don't forget, it's on Friday. Tomorrow, it's the 18th of September. It's just already, summer is almost over next week. So you can still watch and you can register even though it's not going to be live. But tomorrow it's live. So yeah, join us. Thanks, everyone. Bye. And if you have any questions, if you want to add on with other paintings and other contemporary artists, and any paintings that you have seen, or any comments, just add them to the comment section and just send us a DM. Bye.